lightly touching the screen, lightly touching the screen. Hello folks, and welcome to Netcruzer Tech. Today we're going to talk about iPads, specifically iPad Pro versus iPad. This is a 2018 iPad that I showed in a previous video, and this is a 2015 iPad Pro. Now obviously the biggest difference is the size. This is the 12.9 inch versus a 9.7. Now this is a first generation iPad Pro. So this is the 2015 model where it still has the 60 Hertz display. It still has the same kind of camera module as is in the 2018. This iPad Pro 2015 runs the A9X processor, and this 2018 iPad runs the A10. The iPad Pros are 1 to 1.5 millimeters thinner, as well as the big benefit of going to a Pro iPad is that you get a fully laminated display. The screen itself is laminated to the glass, so there is no air gap. Versus with this, you can tell that they're under an ever so slight gap under the glass. It's subtle, but you can see it in real life. The other big difference in laminated versus non-laminated display is in reflectivity. Now it's hard to maybe tell right now, but this is with the air gap in a normal iPad versus the iPad Pro. Now when I've got a direct window in, it's obviously they're still very reflective, they're glass, but when you turn the screens on, when you've got it pointed up to light, the reflectivity is more on any kind of a display that has an air gap versus a display without it. The new 2018 iPad slightly oversaturated the red. And comparing it to this 2015 iPad Pro, I can say that that is true. So if you go into something like Photos, you can see how much different the red point is. This is not accurate display. They've bumped up the saturation and the contrast on this new 2018 to make it look more vibrant, but it really ruins the color accuracy. Now, if you go and get a 2017 or newer iPad Pro, they're even better displays where they have true motion, 120 Hertz refresh, adaptive refresh rates, as well as full P3 color gamut, which this one does not have. How does a 3-year-old processor that was on the Pro compare to the new 2018 iPad? I'm gonna load up a game. They're both set up where now there's no apps in resident memory. Oh, that's what happened. Okay, there's no apps in resident memory, so we're just going to do a performance test here to see. Benchmarks show that the A10 in this is just as fast as the A9X, but this has quad, that's what the X is, means more GPU cores than this. So when it comes to a game, I think that loading the game might be similar. Performance-wise, we're going to run the game Breakneck, and I'm just going to try and tap them both at the same time. 1, 2, 3, go. All right, I got them both at the same time. Now let's see which one loads faster. iPad Pro beat out on the initial load. It's ever so slightly faster on iPad Pro. Something I do notice that I have trouble with on the iPad Pro is that when trying to move apps, since it is such a big gap between them, it's hard to find the point where you can get the apps to move. And on a normal iPad, it just seems a bit more responsive for moving icons around. And I think that's just because of how they have the grid spacing. You get so much more waste space on an iPad Pro desktop versus a normal iPad. Go. There, finally got it. Anyway, from a game's perspective, negligible performance. You're going to be fine with an A10. A9X is still plenty fast. You don't have to worry about that. But if you're going to get a newer iPad Pro 2017 or newer, you got the A10X, which is also very, very good. And then probably in June, they'll be coming out with the 2018 iPad Pros, and those will have an A11X or better. So the CPUs take a big jump every year just to see how they compare for this generational gap, because this is 3 years older than this. And from a performance perspective, they are fairly comparative. Although the iPad Pro has twice as much RAM. This has 4 gigabytes of RAM, and this has 2 gigabytes of RAM. So that means that this is going to hold apps in memory better for multitasking. And the multitasking experience on a Pro iPad is much superior to this just because you have the added real estate, especially on the 12.9 inch Pro, because when you go into the split screen mode, you're getting almost 2 full screens of an iPad. So let me go into a multitasking. We'll bring up Twitter and we'll run Twitter. Let me go into full multitasking and set the window size to the half screen. And now you're getting 2 full iPad apps running at the same time on a Pro screen. If you try and do that on an iPad 9.7, where's Twitter? Oh, in order to do multitasking, you have to have it in the dock. That did not used to be the case. Because now if I want to be running my browser and then run Twitter as well, if it's not available in the dock, I can't do it. If you can, please let me know, because I haven't been able to figure that out yet. This is what happens if you run split screen on an iPad 9.7. It goes into like an iPhone type mode for each app, and on an iPad, it keeps it in iPad mode. This is essentially showing you the same amount of information that it would show you on a 9.7 inch iPod in full screen, but just with a couple of pixels missing off of the edges. Really, you don't notice. It's just a little bit skinnier than the full 4:3 wide. But that's what you get. Also, wow, look at the difference in brightness here. I'm going to turn down the brightness on the 2018 just to try and match it. Is this still on full brightness? It is. So yeah, on camera at about 3/4 brightness on the new one is the equivalent of full brightness on the 2015 iPad Pro. On the iPad Pro, you get the smart connector down at the bottom, right there. That is only used for keyboards, and official ones are only available by Apple or by Logitech. So it's really not that useful in my opinion. And I quite like the keyboard on the Pro. Let me get out of this multitasking. If I wanted to bring up the keyboard experience on the Pro is really good, actually. This is almost a full 10-finger typing experience. You can do that in landscape mode versus a normal iPad. It's definitely a pecking experience. So I do like that quite a bit. And I don't know what that's like on the 10-inch, but on the 12-inch, you get a nice, spacious keyboard. And I think they have revised it a bit from when this first came out running iOS 9. Now we're at iOS 11, and the keyboard is much improved. Finally, they've moved the cut, paste, all that stuff up here. It used to be down here. Now they've made it more like a traditional keyboard layout, which I really enjoy. But I've noticed that it only applies for apps that are coded for it. The app that I've found that is the least optimized for a Pro is, surprisingly enough, Facebook. If I go into Facebook, it does not, no, not now. It does not utilize the space that a Pro gives you. It's the exact same experience, specifically for a keyboard. If I hit search Facebook, now we've got the old iPad keyboard in a gigantic layout on your 12.9 inch. Just something of note. It's almost to the point where I don't want to use Facebook on the Pro because it's so bad, unoptimized. You know, I'm surprised by that. Every other app I've tried has been optimized for the Pro. Something that's always bugged me on the normal iPads is that they only have speakers on the bottom. And when you're watching video in landscape mode, you only have speakers shooting out of the one side. So if you're ever trying to listen, you essentially never have stereo effect. It's not bad. It's very loud on the new 2018s, but you don't get stereo effect. On the iPad Pro, there's a speaker on every corner. On every corner of the device, there's a speaker grill. And what that means is that you're always getting stereo effect. There's speaker, 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 speaker. No matter what orientation it is, you're always getting a stereo type effect. I am a little bit disappointed in the performance of these speakers. Something that is very noticeable when you're listening to it is that the speakers are firing behind the screen. It is disappointing. Let me just bring up my own channel here. Look at it go! Hello folks, and welcome to Netcruzer RC. Alright, so out of necessity, I am going to jump to a 2S LiPo, just because this battery was not charged from the factory. Let me just show you an example on a 2018 iPad. Look at it go! Hello folks, and welcome to Netcruzer RC. Alright, so out of necessity, I am going to jump to a 2S LiPo, just because this battery was not charged from the factory. Well, that may be hard to tell, but I have noticed that when you're actually using an iPad Pro, since there's little speakers on every corner, the cupping actually still makes a big difference. How you hold it really reflects the sound back towards you, and I feel like that is needed. It's something that is a little bit annoying that these speakers are still feel like they're pointed out to the side or skewing backwards from behind the viewer. I gotta say, I was all excited to finally have an iPad that has stereo. It's not very good. Maybe you can get a case that reflects the sound back towards you, but yeah, I will say that I was a little bit disappointed with the speaker setup on the Pro, even though it has quad speakers. Now, one of the biggest reasons why you might want to go to a Pro is for the superior drawing experience, and I'm going to try and demonstrate that a little bit. As mentioned in the previous video about this 2018 iPad, I did notice that it was particularly loud when even trying to lightly put the, if you're trying to write something, look at the difference there. It still certainly makes a noise. It's not as quiet as pencil and paper, but it is far superior. Especially when you're trying to draw lightly. It does make a difference. So lightly touching the screen, lightly touching the screen. That is very noticeable to me, as well as the iPad Pros. The feeling that you get of the pencil on the screen is different than you get on the non-Pro. I'm just using the sketchbook here. Oh yeah, the other thing is you can't just jump, your pencil can't jump from one iPad to another. It doesn't work like that. So even if Bluetooth knows what pencil you have, you can't just use it on two devices. It only pairs to one, and the only way to get it to pair to the other is you gotta plug it in. So I'm gonna show you something about just drawing performance. So how quickly does it catch up to me? If I go to something like a brush, you can see the lag there a little bit while it catches up. You can see that it ever so slightly happens behind. Now for me, I like just sketching in pencil, and you do not notice any lag with pencil. Also, depending on the app, performance is greatly differentiated depending on what you're doing. So you can see that it's struggles behind me a little bit. So I'll try and get my pencil into pair mode on the 2018. Pair. Okay, now we're set up to draw on this one. I'll go into sketchbook as well. I'm using the same brush. The brush is set to 141.6, same brush, and I'm just going to show you that performance-wise, it's actually better for lag on more complicated brushes. So that's where it's a little bit CPU limited. Where, let me just clear that out so you can see. Let me open up a new canvas, new sketch, discard. Okay, all right, one of the big differences is just the amount of real estate you have to draw. If you want to be able to move your pages around, you can. You get a lot more drawing surface on a new 12-inch than you do on the 9.7 for sure. But brush lag is less on a 2018. But if you have a 2017 iPad Pro, it's going to have even better performance than this 2018. This brush tool gets in the way because I'm a little bit cramped for space. On this one, you know, I have no problems with that. There is something superior about the feeling of the pen on the glass. It feels more realistic. It has more of a resistance to it than it does on the glass on this. You can hear the difference in hardness, where when you're drawing on this, it's a little bit slicker feeling. I don't know, there is a slight feeling difference. It's not that this is bad, but this does feel superior. I ended up getting a Pro off of eBay for less money than the 2018 iPad. So for me, the small little amount of performance loss, it actually makes up for it for the bigger screen, stereo speakers, laminated display, and better color accuracy. Well, it's just having a much larger canvas for drawing. But But if you just want your everyday iPad, the same iPad that's been around for this screen size, the 9.7 inch, there's really nothing better right now performance-wise than the 2018 iPad. And yes, I'm disappointed that the colors are oversaturated. Yes, I'm a little bit disappointed that drawing on it is loud, but the fact that they added in drawing support is a good thing. Really, it comes down to what do you want and what is your budget? Because was that there's a $1,000 plus iPad now. These can go up to $1,500 if you spec them out with a max storage. Way too much money. So I got this for a third of the price of buying a brand new one, and I'm quite happy with that. Unless you're really into drawing, I don't think that you necessarily need to jump up in money to get a Pro. You probably will be plenty happy with the 2018 iPad. I was kind of all over the place with this review, but really mostly I just wanted to show you what I ended up doing. I got a Pro and I wanted to compare it to a 2018 iPad. If you enjoyed this or found it helpful, please hit that like button. Leave a comment below if there's something you wanted to know that I didn't show. And if you know someone who's interested in getting a 2018 iPad or an iPad Pro, please share this around, because I am showing some unique things, particularly from a drawing perspective, that some other people have not showed. I will likely be doing another video about stylus use, because I am quite interested in showing that. As I mentioned in my previous video about the 2018 iPad, that this iPad pencil is the best performing digital active stylus I've ever used. And I do have a few of them. So I'd like to compare this with the Surface Pro pen, as well as with a Wacom Bamboo Fine Point, I think. That's the active stylus that works on non-pencil iPads. So thanks for watching.